In this video, I would like to show you how budgets work in Odoo 12. For that, I'm going to go to Accounting and find the Budget menu under Accounting. Here I see different budgets that I have created. The black ones are confirmed or validated, the gray ones is canceled, and the blue ones are draft. The difference is that when it's draft, I still get to edit everything about my budget. And once it's confirmed or validated, I cannot edit anymore. At any point in time, I can cancel it and reset it to draft later. So as you can see now, I cannot edit it anymore when it's confirmed. I cannot edit it anymore when it's validated. I can cancel it and reset to draft if I want to. A budget is always about a certain period of time. In this case, it's going to be 2019, January 1st to December 31st. And the way you want to build your budget really depends on what you want to track and what kind of business you have. It could be, for example, that you want to track the budget for a particular project. And so what you're going to have in the budget lines is going to depend on how you want to track your budget and how you want to structure that for your business. Here we have several budget lines in this budget. And what's really important to understand is that each budget line is going to count the debits or the credits of the journal items that respect the conditions of the first four columns. So what are the first four columns? First, we have something called budgetary position. And in fact, this is something that you can find in the configuration menu in the budgetary position menu here. Right now, all I have in my budgetary positions is one record that I called BudPos. And it contains two accounts, sales and foreign exchange gain. I just use those as an example. I could have as many accounts, so financial accounts, as I want here. And so we have this as a first column because we could decide that we want to count the journal items according to what a financial account is used. And then we have an alternative. We could also decide to count what's in the budget line according to the analytic account that is used in the journal item. So we can either decide to track our budgets based on the financials accounts that are used on journal items, or based on the analytic accounts, or based on both. And we'll see that as an example a little later. And then finally, the third and fourth column are the start dates and the end dates that should be considered for this particular budget line. These start and end date should fit inside the period of the budget as a whole. So for example, the second one I have here is January 1st, January 31st, 2019, and it fits inside the whole period. So after that, I will be able to also specify the planned amount. So that's what I expect that should be the amount for this particular budget line. So the first one, because it's negative, is obviously going to consider that those are expenses. And whenever it's positive, it's going to expect that this would be income. And so the journal items that will be created when either validating a customer invoice as an income, or when validating a vendor bill that would be an expense. So in my first example, I'm going to count every journal item that uses the administrative analytic account at some point in January 2019. And I'm going to count all of those. And if I ever have something that respects those conditions, then my practical amount is going to change. So it's the practical amount that is going to represent the sum of all the debits and credits that I'm going to have on those particular journal items. And then finally, we have the theoretical amount in the achievement. So the theoretical amount is where you would be if you were to incur that income or those expenses linearly along the dates between the start date and the end date. So, as an example, on this first line, administrative, today is July 13, 2019. So, we are a little past half of the year. And as you can see, the start and end date corresponds to the entire year. So, obviously, if it was linear on this line, we would have to be a little over half the minus 35,000, and that's exactly where we are right now on July 13. Another example of this for the theoretical amount is obviously because January 2019 is over. If we planned to make $10,000, we would have to have the $10,000 because January is over. Same all the way to June, and then for July, because we are for on this line July 1st, July 31st, because we're on July 13, we're not exactly at half of the month yet. We're almost there, and so that's why we're going to see just a little less than half of 13,000 here in the theoretical amount. So the theoretical amount is going to allow you to see if you are close to where you should be, at least if you work linearly, on that particular budget line at a moment in time. And finally, the achievement is once you have something in the practical amount and the theoretical amount, it's going to tell you where you stand in regards with your budget. So as an example, here we have $102 for our practical amount over $2,664 for the theoretical amount. That represents about 3.86% of the budget at this time. And then finally, that last arrow allows us to see the journal items that explain the amount that we see in the practical amount. So I have filled in various budget lines on this budget. I have an administrative one that's negative over the entire year. I have lines that go all the way from January all the way to December 1st to December 31st for the analytic account Deco Addict. It could be for an example of tracking the budget for a project using this analytic account month after month. And you see that I have a different planned amount per month. And then I have a line, second to last line, that's using my budgetary position and no analytic account. And as you can see, those two fields are optional, but obviously you need to use one or the other or both. So we've been using analytic account on all the previous lines. On this line, we're going to use the financial accounts only, and no conditions on analytic accounts. And on the last one, we're going to use both. And we will see how the numbers add up as we go through different invoices in a second. I just need to specify my planned amount for this last one. Let's just say 6,000. So I'm all done with my budget. I can save it. I actually don't have to confirm it and validate it to make it work. So I'm not going to. This way, I still can edit it if I want to. It's just a mechanism to lock the budget once it's fully decided by all the stakeholders. Now, let's start to validate some invoices. So the first invoice I have is an invoice to a customer, and I'm selling him 14,000 bolts at $1 a bolt. And it could be really any product and any customer, because that's not in my 4 conditions. And I'm doing this in June, in the middle of June. So June is past. And notice how the analytic account that I'm using is Deco Addict. And I'm going to change the financial account to something different. So for example, let's say this one, fixed asset. And I'm going to validate this, and we're going to see how this impacts. So I don't have my a financial account that is in my conditions for my budgetary position, but I have a Deco Addict analytic account. So let's validate this in June. And when we come back to our budget, if I refresh my budget, let's have a look at how those practical amounts change. I refresh, and I see that I got $14,000 in my practical account in June. And that's correct because I have an analytic account, Deco Addict, that was used in that period of time. Hence, it adds up here. It didn't apply anywhere else because any of the two last budget lines would require to use either sales or any financial account I have in my budgetary position, which was not the case right now. Let's move on to another example. And after this first invoice, I'm going to go with a second invoice. Again, it's with Deco Addict, but it's going to be just 3 days ago, on July 10th. And I'm going to sell again 14,000 bolts, $1 a bolt. But I'm going to use my sales account and the Deco Addict analytic account this time. So I validate this, and let's see how it reflects on our budget. So let's keep an eye on the practical amounts, and I'm going to refresh. And we see that this one has been added in July because the analytic account in July was respected. And we see that it has also been added into this second to last line here because the financial account was respecting this condition. So as you can see, using financial accounts and analytic accounts is an or condition. The moment one of them is respected, if the other one is empty, it's going to work. Sorry, I should have said it's an and condition because the last one, even though we used sales, we did not use after sales services. So it's an and condition for as long, and if the two fields is empty, then it's not going to represent an additional condition, obviously. Let's move on to our third invoice. And in our third invoice, we have an invoice again in July. Again, 14,000 bolts, $1 a bolt. And the financial account is sales, so that's going to fit with our budgetary position. And we have no analytic account this time. So let's validate this invoice, and let's come back to our budget to see how it reflects on those practical amounts. And we see that the second to last line was changed again, where because the financial account was the sales account, it respected this line, and it did not update the July line for Deco Addict because we did not use this analytic account in our invoice, as expected. Let's move on to a fourth invoice. And in this fourth invoice, we have, again, 14,000 bolts at $1 a bolt. And we are using a sales financial account. And we're also using the after sales services analytic account. And we validate, and we come back to our budget. Let's refresh our budget. And we see that what has been updated is the last line because both the financial account and the analytic account were respecting this condition. Now, we have done pretty much every possibilities with those four invoices as examples. And what works for invoices works the exact same way with bills. So if you were to use a bill here, it would just go negative on your practical amounts and on your theoretical amounts. We also see that the achievements have changed. And we also see that certain lines are black and some other lines are green. And the reason for this is because depending on if the time is passed and depending on if the achievement is above 100% or not, the lines will be colored green, or they will stay black, or in the case of a bill, they might become red when you are spending too much money in comparison with your budget. Finally, let's just have a look at the journal items that explain those 42,102.78 here. By clicking on the entries here, we will find this amount here explained by each of the debits and credits of those journal items. I believe that's it for this video. I hope that was helpful. Thank you.